Hello and welcome to Brian Reeby Drives Electric. Today I'm taking a close look at the Mustang Mach E and getting my first impressions. Now I've seen this vehicle for a couple years at different auto shows and places where it's standing still and I can go look at it, but this is my first time sitting in it and driving in it. So I'm pretty excited. A big thank you to Yuka from the Minnesota EV Owners Group and to Paul from Roseau County Ford. Excited to get a chance to look at this vehicle. Now, I am coming at this as a Tesla Model Y owner and former Tesla Model S owner, so I have, obviously that bias, and I'm not in the market for a new car, but this has always seemed like a well-designed and good transition vehicle from people who are used to driving an ICE car and making the switch to electric. Editing Brian here, I just wanted to jump in quick and let you know that there are chapter markers down below to help you find your way around. This review got a little bit long, but there are two main sections. First is my impressions and driving, charging, all that kind of stuff, my experience with the Mach E. The second part is a phone interview I did with Paul Blomquist, the Ford dealership owner who loaned out the Mach E for test drives. And we had a great conversation about the Mach E, the F-150 Lightning coming up, what it's like to be a rural northern Minnesota dealership owner, and Ford's electrification plans in the coming years. He's got some great insights and perspectives that you won't want to miss. But first, let's catch up with me getting my bearings in the Mach E. All right, first impressions, there's a lot of buttons and a lot on the screen. So with so much up here, it's a little odd to then have to go down here to the scroll wheel on the center console to put it in gear. Not the end of the world, but these are things it'll take a little bit to get used to. I'm not going to connect it to my phone. I'm just going to use the navigation. Try to find chargers. We're at only 75 miles or 30%. So I want to find the Electrify America chargers. Oh, charging. Okay. Let's look for charging stations. Not super fast, but not bad. And we want to go to, which would prioritize fast charging. We want to go to Electrify America. I'm just going to change that. Let's see if there is voice command, maybe. Here we go. Navigate to Electrify America in Woodbury, Minnesota.
Starting route to Electrify America, Woodbury Walmart Supercenter.
Okay. Volume is
Obey
very...
traffic laws. Be alert and use voice commands while driving.
Okay.
At the end of the street, turn left, then take the first right.
Now this seems to be oriented north. I'm going to see if that changes. No. Well, we'll see when we put it in drive. So in park, let's go to drive here. Yuka did turn on a driving sound. I'm not hearing it much now. Maybe a little warble. The turn signal sounds a little bit like hooves clopping, a little Monty Python-ish. I don't think it realizes you can cross right here, but you can. There's a lot going on the screen, a lot of big icons. I guess I'm coming from the Y, so I'm used to looking for everything on the center screen, and that's where I wanted that that visualization of which way I'm going in the moment. And now looking here in front of me, I can see that my next turn is a left. It's a little easier to follow. So most people coming from a traditional ICE car or a more typical interface vehicle would be looking here initially. Whereas, my instinct is to turn right now, which is interesting. Because as we've been doing events this Drive Electric week, people have asked how long it takes you to get used to the center screen, and really not long apparently. And it seems to drive pretty well. It's got, I think we're in unbridled mode, which is the fastest setup, and it seems to have good pickup. I haven't had a chance to really put it down, but when I emerge onto the highway, I will. I think if you were coming from a standard gas car, this would feel pretty futuristic and relatively familiar. To me, it's a lot of buttons and a lot going on. On the steering wheel, these big icons here are a little bit distracting because I keep expecting there to be valuable information in them, and this is no device connected, no phone connected. Well, I don't really need to see that, but there again, maybe if you had your phone connected, you'd want there. And this actually dovetails really nicely into the Electrify America video I did a couple weeks ago, because now I've got the app set up. I think this vehicle has plug-in charge, in which case I'll be able to, should be able to walk up, plug it in, and it should just work. That will be interesting. At least an Unbridled seems to handle well, turn well, feels good, seems to handle the bumps pretty well. One of the things I noticed in the Model Y is that you really don't see the dash in front of you, or the hood in front of you. It just kind of drops off. And here you can definitely see the hood. Feels good around this corner. Feels very planted. There's a little rattling, but I think that's just my tripods in the back. So if you're hearing rattles over bumps, that's not the car. Let's just give it a little beans here. That engine noise is preposterous. I other than the gimmick of it, that's really silly. It does nothing for me. It's funny, but it's pretty synthetic. I think I need to turn that off. When you drive the faster EVs, it definitely starts to become silly. Some of the roaring for the sake of roaring, and still slow speeds. It's pretty comfortable cruising, I gotta say. This is a fairly new road, fairly smooth, but for the first few miles, the seat feels comfortable. I like the little icon on the blind spot warning on the mirror. It's a tad distracting, but I know someone's there, so that's something that's not in the Teslas. You can see it on the screen. You get more of a visualization of where your car is in space on the screen. But I do like the blind spot warnings. They're doing their job. The regen isn't nearly as strong as the Model Y. It's there, but it doesn't come on as strong, so if you're coming from a nice vehicle, you might like that better. It's a little bit of a learning curve of finding how much it's going to slow down for you. So I was expecting a little more deceleration. Just crossed the white line there and got a little feedback in the steering wheel. That was nice. This is a vehicle that I know a lot of people are really excited about. I've been talking for about 1.5 years with various people who can't wait to get their Mach E, or have put an order in, or want to know about it. And I know there have been a lot of videos on it. I can totally appreciate that not everyone wants a Tesla, and there are other good options on the road. So when I'm comparing this to my Model Y, it's more out of this is what I'm familiar with, rather than this one does this or that better, because everybody's got their own preferences on things. Some people like different interfaces, some people like different body styling, and how much control the car has versus how much you have. So I'm going to try to be as honest as I can about things, but like I said, some of this stuff is going to be subjective, and everybody's got their own preferences. Already, just driving in a few miles, I can tell this is a very fine vehicle that's going to work out great for a lot of people. Okay, well, we're at a stoplight. I figured, okay, well, I'll go back in and change the driving style, or the, turn off that extra noise. And these menus are dense, and the home screen doesn't take you back to home. It doesn't seem to time out. Now I know where I'm going, so it's not the end of the world, but in situations like this, I would really appreciate if you were doing something at a stoplight and then continued on your way. I would like this to time out and take me back. It looks like now that I'm at another stop, looks like I can do that. Okay. So that's one of those things, as you learn the vehicle, you're going to know those little swipes and things. Cancel the navigation. Okay, I know where I am. And it didn't seem to be doing any preconditioning or anything knowing we're going to a charger, which is probably fine, but just something of note. Okay, we figured that out. So now the map is now oriented the way I'm going. I prefer that, so it's good that you can switch that. Like I said, there's a lot on the screen, and I know people feel this way about Teslas too, of like, your first impression of the screen is it's so much to figure out where is everything. So I just found that. That's good. That'll be handy coming in later. Do need to find a way to turn that fake engine noise off, though. It's kind of detracting from how quiet the vehicle is in other respects. It just seems like there's a humming or like somebody left a fan on. And we are at Electrify America. So let's plug this baby in and see how it does. We're going to power down. Alarm system, turn off motion sensors. Yes, I don't need those because I will be around the vehicle the whole time. Okay, let's get outside and try to get this baby plugged in. All right, welcome to my new haunt, the Electrify America station in Woodbury, Minnesota. And we are taking a look at the Mustang Mach E and giving it its first charge. Yuko didn't charge it last night, so this was a great opportunity to bring it over and see if it's set up for plug-in charge. If it is, fantastic. If not, I'll just start it with my app. But hoping this is a pretty seamless operation, although I may have parked a little too far away from the cabinet. We'll see when I try to plug it in. Could be a comedy of errors here. So far, my first drive over here from St. Paul to Woodbury was very pleasant, enjoyable drive. I got to turn that audio off of the fake driving sound. But other than that, plenty of punch, pleasant drive, and good first impression. Yep, I'm an idiot. So I'm gonna have to move the car and try again. That's on me. Okay, a couple good experiences there. The door was locked, so I had to unlock it with a fob, which is a little annoying since I was so close, but whatever. Door handle, not a problem at all, really easy. Hit that button with your thumb, pull open the latch. Also, when I put it in reverse, I'm starting to get used to the dial being down on the ground there, or on the center console. And as I put it in reverse, there were some cars passing behind me. The cross-traffic collision warning was beeping like hell and letting me know that there's something back there. That was very good. Also, there is a great view camera on the front end, and so as I came back closer and closer to the curb, it was giving me a beep and also showing me exactly how close I was. So that was pretty good, but now we're close enough. I should be able to reach and plug in, and we'll do that process. So now plug in first. I think you just, again, I'm not sure if you need to have I'm guessing it locked on me again. This is the kind of stuff that I'm going to fumble with, but you wouldn't if you were an owner. Okay. Is there I guess I'll get in and see if there's an open charge port button. There are so many buttons, but not a charge port button that I'm seeing. Must be on the screen. So, and I have watched a ton of reviews on the Mach E because I have been interested in it, but I intentionally did not rewatch things last night because I wanted the experience of a new driver getting into it after they had maybe watched some videos, but there's got to be something right in front of me that I'm just missing. Let's check the owner's manual. I'm going to be roasted for being so stupid here, but it seems like it should be so obvious. Okay, well, we don't need to worry about charging precautions if we can't get it started. I swear I've seen people just pressing the door. According to YouTube, you should be able to just Okay, I just wasn't pushing it hard enough. That was a lot of drama for nothing. But now that we finally got the charge port open, we can see if we can initiate charging. Next big step. And flip that little guy down. All right, we got some lights flashing there. We got blue. Is blue good? Connecting vehicle. It's saying connecting to vehicle, but not asking for additional payment yet, which I can do. A couple minutes here. Charging start error cannot be initiated. Okay, need to reconnect. Okay, getting red there. Try this again. Getting red on the car. This is connecting to the vehicle on the pedestal still. It was getting red there around the charge lock. So I don't know if because I was holding it, it was giving me red. Let's see if it's gonna connect here. Charging start error. I'm going to try to move. There might be too much pressure on the cable. If it's a little tweaked, that might be the issue. I'm not sure. So far, this isn't a great start, but this might just be a learning curve for a new owner or someone who just picked it up like me. We'll see. All right, we moved over. Hopefully this gives a little less pressure on the charge port. We now know how to open it. Just got to push with authority there. And I'm going to try the other handle on this unit. It feels like there's a lot of tension on. I'm getting a red flashing on the vehicle. Okay, now that's stopped. So that circle around the charge port lock was flashing red, but now is stopped. And this is just a little confusing as far as what it's telling you where. This is probably very obvious to someone who's familiar with CCS, but coming from a different system, it's pretty confusing. Charging start error. Please be sure your vehicle's plugged in. Okay, so it still thinks it's plugged in wrong. I'm gonna give this one more shot at another pedestal and pull in super close and see if that'll do it. Not sure what the issue is here. All right, third time's the charm, right? Got the handle pulled in really close. Putting it in as straight and gentle as I can. Okay, looks like it's thinking. We might have a winner here. Connecting to vehicle. Okay, it's wanting me to create my credit card or mobile wallet. Okay, payment authorized. But it says we're initiating charging. All right, warming up. That's a good sign. So I don't know if there was an issue with the pedestal, with how I was putting the charger in, or what the deal was, but interesting. This is still pretty expensive charging. 43 cents a kilowatt hour is quite a bit. So it's saying, okay, here we go. We're at 23% right now, ramping up 119 kilowatts. Maybe that's the best it'll do. But we're ramping up. So it is 11:28. I recognize that some of this could be user error, but it's taken about 25 minutes to get the charging started, and now I actually have to be on my way before too long. So I'm going to do some extra B-roll here, then I'm going to have to take it down to my house, do some slower to level 2 charging there, just because of how long it took to set up here. So not an ideal situation. Once it's working, but that 20-25 minutes of rigmarole, plugging, moving the car, replugging, moving the car, trying to get it to work was pretty frustrating. And unfortunately, I think that's going to put some people off what otherwise seems to be a very nice vehicle. we got that little just pop open, but it won't close on you. Thanks to that little button. But the back seat is not super big, so not too bad. It seems a little narrow, like my head is pretty close to the headliner here. Like over there, it feels like I'm a little bit there, but the roof is nice glass roof. Seat seems pretty comfortable. My feet are under the seat from my own sitting position, but acceptable. Getting out of the back seat, I did notice you kind of have to turn and come out. You kind of have to plant your elbow here and turn to get out. So it's a little bit of a narrow opening, but you know, acceptable. And trunk space, we can see I got it filled up with camera gear here. Not too bad, but not as spacious as the Model Y. It's not quite as deep or quite as wide. When I get home, I will check that with a tape measure. There's a little bit of under trunk space. And it looks like it comes with an air pump. You got lights back here and 12-volt outlet. Electrify America did re-up my account as far as making another deposit from my credit card. So just be aware of that it will top off from your main account. And at 42%, we are still getting 116 kilowatts, 43%. And so it's holding a pretty good charge rate, even as we're nearing 50. All right, to stay on my schedule for the day, we're gonna have to unplug here. We're at 49%. I'll maybe I'll let it get to 50. So at 50%, we're still at 105 kilowatts. That took 13 minutes to get from 23% to 50%. So not a bad charge rate. It's just that time it took to get things started that was a little frustrating. And the charging cost is not cheap. Here it's $10.32. If you had plug-in charge, or we're doing the monthly plan through Electrify America, I think you could get a better rate there. We've stopped it. It's giving us the 10 minutes to unplug and get moving. And we've got the red plug, so I don't know if that's just saying we need to press that to release it, or if there's some sort of error. We'll have to check on the inside. But these charge cables aren't the worst in the world, but they are a little heavy, and there's not quite enough quite enough cable to really get it comfortably. You know, I'm pulled right to the bumper. I wouldn't want to go any further over that. And even the cable on this side was still a pretty snug fit in there. So interesting experience here, but we'll take it on the road a little bit more and get some more impressions. Navigate to Burnsville, Minnesota.
Starting route to Burnsville.
Volume on the assistant is
Obey traffic
very
laws.
loud. Okay, so that came up pretty snappy. I still have on this center screen, I have charge station fault, see manual. And it's weird because I just ended the session on the pedestal like it told me to. So it's odd that it found a fault, but really odd that the charge station fault is still on my binnacle screen. You would think that would clear. And maybe that's I'm going to check here as I come to a stop. Is that something you can clear or swipe? No, that doesn't seem to have any. So odd that it doesn't come off of the screen when you've clearly left the charging station. Navigation seems to be okay, if you know where you're going. When I was navigating here, it gave me, charge stations, but all the ones nearby and not necessarily sorted by power. Well, it's saying door unlocked. I have a Saturn in front of me that's just spewing smoke and making me very glad that EVs are coming, because although it's not a big car, you can just see the oil burning out of the back of it. Because I'm guessing that engine's not in the best shape. So another little oddity, you'll probably get used to it, but when switching between the spots frequently, it was pretty frustrating to have to hit the power on and off button all the time. Obviously, you can get out of it without hitting the button, but when I need to move it, it needs to be powered on. So that just takes a couple seconds. Again, if you're used to it, it might not be a big deal, but especially with the frustration of trying to figure out the charging issue and moving that, seemed a little unnecessary. I don't know, I would guess that's something they could change in a software update where you don't need to. I believe the ID4 has a start-stop button too, but you don't actually need to press it. You can just get in, put your foot on the brake, and put it in gear. So now that I've got the map oriented how I like it, this is a pretty pleasant experience. We've still got that charge fault on the screen here, rather than showing me directions or any other info. We'll see how long that holds on. If you're coming from a traditional vehicle, you know, the buttons and controls, especially from a Ford, I'm guessing the controls on the steering wheel will seem pretty natural for you. And I have to say that's probably one of the biggest pluses of this vehicle. Getting in it, you know, once you get to the driving part, you don't really notice that it's electric. And I mean that in a great way. That I'm a little unfamiliar with it, and it feels like I just picked up a new rental car in a new city. Not that I'm driving a new type of technology. It's quick, it's responsive. Like I said, ride height is good. Visibility is pretty good. It's comfortable, relatively quiet. I will give the Blue Cruise a try, but this probably isn't the spot for it, or the time for it. We are in my messy garage, and you can see this is the setup I have for my Tesla Model Y home charging with just the NEMA 1450 plug. And you can see the charge unit, the mobile connector that I use to charge it up every night. Ford provides a very similar unit for charging the Mach E, and like the Tesla connector, this top part can swap out for different plug types. We've got the NEMA 1450 adapter on here now, and so I'll just swap this out for my charger. Plugs in, and you probably can't see it on there, but there is a little blue light showing that it's ready to plug in. So let's take this over to the Mach E. So we're plugged in at the garage, and this should be a pretty smooth operation compared to the fast charger. And this is just a J1772 connector. We can see we've got two blue lights there. Shows we're starting to charge up in that second light, and it's going relatively slow because this is level 2. So here you can see a variety of different adapters, 4 different plugs, and then this is the standard 120 outlet adapter that would come with the mobile charging unit. So if you didn't have a dedicated outlet, you could still charge off a 120 volt power. Now when you get in the car and it's off, you have all these little animations, these little Mustang animations, which is kind of fun, but like I said, I would prefer if it just woke up and turned on for you. Driver door ajar, I know. Guess I'm gonna... And you can see the animation takes a little while to get through itself. If I have the car on, it shows the full accessory power active above my charge rate. We left Woodbury at 50%, got down to 38 coming down here. So let's turn it off here on the power button. And now see if we get... Now with the power off, you don't see anything. So we are still plugged in and charging, but without the Ford app or with having the accessories on, it doesn't seem like you can actually see what state of charge you are and where you're going. A little frustrating, but I think that would be solved if you had the app connected to the car. You should be able to see some of that kind of stuff. All right, here we are with the all-important trunk information. Now, with the camera gear out of there, you can see it's a pretty decent size, but more hatchback car size, I would say, than typical SUV. This shade hooks under the top hatch and will lift up to cover anyone from seeing in your back window, which is kind of nice. It's off right now. I'm going to leave it off. And then, like I showed earlier, there is some underspace here. It's relatively flush with the bottom here. There's about a 1.5 inch lip, and there are these tie downs here and here, these eyelets that you could use to secure a load if you had to maybe have the hatch open for some reason. There is a handle on the bottom of the door, so you can easily grab that and pull it down, but there's also a button on the other side to close it automatically. Let's see how big the opening is here. I'm going to call that 43 inches, a little less down here, closer to 42, but the main opening is, I'd say, 43. Once you get up to here, it's about 41. It's not super wide, but fine. And no real side pockets, although there is a little indent on either side where you can see the umbrella is there. Depth from the back of the plastic, we've got 31.5 inches here, 34 inches here, and 31 there. So really the absolute max you could fit in here would be something 34 inches long, and that would have to be pretty flat and pretty narrow. A typical box in here, you have about 26 inches till it's going to be hitting the door. And then at the very top of the seats, you would have, well, considerably less, maybe only 18 inches. So this space does shrink pretty quickly. The seats do fold down pretty easily from just a little press switch on the top of the seat. And there you can see you get quite a bit more depth into the vehicle. To the back of the front seat, as I have it set, that's 65 inches, so about 5'4", 5'5". And to the passenger side, again, you know, if you wanted to live dangerously and slide something all the way up to the front screen, you could get an 8-foot board in there, but I would definitely put a pad or something on that front end and make sure you're not crashing into that screen, because that would be an expensive repair. Probably better to have it sit back and leave the trunk open and use these tie downs to help secure things. So it's not going to be a great lumber hauler. I have hauled some different 8-foot length things in my Model Y, so if you're careful, it can be done, but again, do so at your own risk. I like that the level of this base here is pretty flat with the folded down seat. So if you wanted to do some car camping and you aren't too tall, you could probably do that. You could move the seats up presumably a few inches, and if you don't mind bending your legs or laying kitty corner, you could probably make that work. And it might be more comfortable than laying down in one of the front seats. The height of this lip off the ground is about 30.5 inches, so 30 to 31 depending on how level of ground you're going to be on. Interesting on the center console that it's got this armrest, which is pretty comfortable, but the space underneath it, there's no sidewall. So for tucking things in, things might spill out of there a little bit. There does seem to be this, which would help keep things contained and actually give you another little space to rest things. But I think I would most of the time keep that wide open. There is a 12 volt in there. And then there is cell phone charging and USBs of both types right there in the center. So pretty handy. Looks like we've got park and parking brake here with the center dial gear shift. And right under the center console, there is this little tunnel space that you could store something in. In the back seat, the middle seat back pops down for a handy armrest and cup holders. And then below the vents in the center, you have 2 charging ports, both USB styles as well, and handy standard pockets behind the seats. Next, let's take a look at some of the stats. According to Shift2 Electric's current info, the Mustang Mach E base price is $42,895, and it's still eligible for the $7,500 EV tax credit, which may change at the end of the year. After that tax credit, that brings the base price down to $35,395. The battery pack size is a range between 76 and 99 kilowatt hours, and the range in distance is rated by the EPA as 210 to 300 miles, depending on the trim level. On a DC fast charger, it can charge up to 150 kilowatts at max charge speed. This will taper down as the battery fills up, especially after 80%. The top speed is 124 miles an hour with a 0 to 60 time anywhere from 3.5 to 6.5 seconds, again depending on the trim level. Now this does not include numbers for the Mustang Mach E GT version, which is more performance driven, and I haven't had a chance to check that out yet. In the future there may be a point of sale rebate, but as of now you have to wait until tax time and take that off of the amount you would owe. And as far as the 300 miles of range go, today I don't have time to do a full range test, but Inside EVs has done a couple of them. I think both Kyle Connor and Tom Malogny have taken Mustang Mach-E's out on a 70 mile an hour range test in different conditions. Kyle on his Out of Spec channel has also done several road trips in the Mach-E. EV Dave also has a lot of videos about the Mach-E. So if you want some longer term impressions, those are good places to look and good resources. This does also have a Bang & Olufsen sound system. It's pretty good. I haven't had a chance to really test it out, but the few songs I've listened to have sounded pretty good. So no complaints there. Okay, this was interesting. I was just thinking, I was in the fast lane and kind of giving it the beans a little bit here and there, and noticing the propulsion sound, and I was thinking, well, what would be the intuitive way how to cancel that? I just kind of took a second look at the screen and noticed that there was is the car icon up on the top. So I pressed that and brought me right to driving modes and the information there and the propulsion sounds. And as you learn the UI, things that seem super confusing at first are going to come more natural. And so we got that shut off, and then now swipe that up to maybe. Yeah, that was odd that it didn't swipe up, but pressing the car again did get us back to where we wanted. So now when we give it the beans, it's there and we don't have that silly noise. So that's good. Still in unbridled mode. And as I'm taking some of these corners I've taken fairly frequently in the Model Y, this does still hold and hug the corner really well, but it does feel like it's got a little bit more float to it than the Model Y. And I don't know if that's because you're sitting maybe slightly higher, maybe a hair higher, or what that is, but it does seem like there's just a little more float in the driving feel around some of the corners. At low speeds, when you're coming out of regen and going into full stop on one pedal driving, it does seem to kind of clunk to a stop, and that takes a little getting used to. Maybe I need to get better at feathering it, but it's definitely something I've noticed where I feel like to equate it to something that would happen in an ICE car, like if it was like switching gears hard, where you kind of felt like a clunk in the transmission. Obviously that's not the case here. Let's see if I can get it to... Oh, that was smooth enough that it didn't happen, which is good. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, it can take you a little bit of a surprise. Also, changing from reverse to forward, sometimes if you do that too quickly, you get kind of a clunk feel. I'm gonna head back up to St. Paul and try out Blue Cruise, see how that works. There, that braking, as I put my foot on the brake, it just kind of had a little, it's hard to describe it, but just a little bit of an extra, like, hey, what was that? Is something wrong? Now this whole time I have been in unbridled mode. I guess I should put it in one of the other driving modes just to get a feel for what that's like. Let's go with Whisper and see what that's all about. Well, I'm behind someone going very slowly. As they get out of my way, I will put it down and see if this feels a little more... Yeah, Whisper mode is a little more tentative than unbridled, but it's not bad. It's still got punch if you want it. And coming from a nice ice car, chances are whisper mode's going to feel pretty sporty to you. Let's try engage. As you would expect, that feels like a good middle ground. One of the things I like about this that I found a little confounding on the Audi e-tron, the Audi e-tron has plenty of power, but you have to almost put it to the floor to get all that. And this is maybe not as quick on the pedal as the Tesla is, but almost. And so as you're putting it down, it keeps giving you more and more and more and more. But you get a good jump right away as you tap the accelerator. Engage is all right. I think most people are going to put this on unbridled and leave it there, unless maybe you're going for, you know, ultimate range or something. And it brings up little lights on the binnacle screen here. That kind of thing doesn't really do much for me, but people like little accent touches, so why not? Yep, unbridled is definitely the way to go. I'm not sure if on the camera shot, in some people's videos I've noticed, you can see there are two lights right here that kind of flicker on and off. I think those are infrared, so I can't see them. If you can see them in the camera shot, they are not distracting, and you barely notice this little bar here. And going through kind of a tight turn there, again, I'm feeling a little bit of that float where it's not quite as tight as the Model Y. It's planted and I'm not worried about it at all. Alright, let's see if I can turn on the lane keeping system. Okay. Okay, looks like I've got Blue Cruise on. Taking my hands off, keeping my eyes on the road. It's making slight adjustments. Let's bump the speed up. Now it's saying keep hands on the steering wheel. Give it a little wiggle. Good for that traffic. That was good. Not really leaving enough space to let this person in. And I'm going to back off just to be a little more polite. That's something that can happen in autopilot too, where it doesn't necessarily let someone merge in very well. I'm very kind about that. Oh. Okay, that's my follow distance. Okay, looks like I am now back in Blue Cruise. There's not a lot of audible chimes to let me know that I'm in it. In fact, I'm not. It's got this little Blue Cruise, or you know, like steering icon on there, but I don't know. I don't really know if it's going to follow this curve, so I am paying attention. It was a pretty slight curve, but it handled it. Here again is giving me hands on the wheel. So I'm steering it. Yeah, it's a little, doesn't seem as steady. And for a hands-free system, it's asking me to put my hands on the wheel a lot, which I don't mind. I think that's actually good. If your hands are there or ready to take action, you're going to get there milliseconds faster if something were to go wrong. So we weren't going super fast, but it went around that curve relatively well. don't feel like it's got a lot of confidence. It's doing it, and I can't say it's doing anything wrong, but it just seems to have, again, a little, the word that keeps coming to mind is float, where it's not dead in the center of the lane. It's kind of trying to figure out. Now, I did make that adjustment and wanted to go toward the airport as the lane split, and I made the adjustment and it stayed in, the adaptive cruise control, or the Blue Cruise, so that was nice. It didn't pull me out, and it's keeping good distance from the person in front of me. We are only going 55 miles an hour, so this isn't exactly a Herculean task to keep us going. Okay, it wants to follow that car. And okay, interesting. So there we kind of went out of Blue Cruise as I was making adjustments, but it never, no ding, no warning that it was going to be taking me out. Did slow down a little bit for that turn, which is good. In talking to Yuka, I don't think he'd seen that yet. Yeah, it's floating a little bit again. I'm going to drop it out because my turn is coming up. All in all, I guess it's what I expected. It wasn't fantastic, but it isn't horrible. I wish it had a little more confidence, which may come over time. A little bit like autopilot, I can see how after a while you'd get a good feeling of what it does well and what it doesn't do well. Obviously, if you're doing a long trip like I was last weekend, where it's mostly interstate miles, it would probably be a really nice benefit. It didn't seem to drive with a level of confidence to give me a good level of confidence in it. Yeah, that may be a learning situation where you grow to understand what it does better, and presumably this system will also improve over time. If you're coming from a vehicle with no adaptive cruise control, no lane keeping or hands-free system or auto steer system, this is probably going to feel pretty revolutionary. And I think it floats enough that it shouldn't lull you into a false sense of security. But if it did, I can see how it could be pretty dangerous because it doesn't necessarily lock you into the lane lines like autopilot does. So again, it all depends on what you're coming from, what you're used to, and what your expectations are. I may have said this elsewhere, but I'm not noticing a big difference in road noise. When I was driving into the wind, it seemed about the same as when I was driving my Model Y. For the dialogue sections, I had to do lots of noise reduction on the audio. I'll play an unaltered clip of highway driving so you can hear the difference in road noise in each vehicle. Okay, final thoughts before I send this back. Just got a few more impressions, and everybody agrees that it's a nice car. Got a few of the not a Mustang statements. If you're mostly going to charge it at home, or you live in a state with great EV infrastructure, this is going to be a really good option for you, and you'll enjoy driving it and owning it. In Minnesota, I'd still be a little cautious and pay close attention to the type of driving you do, but I would still say it's a good option for a lot of people. Long term, with the investments of infrastructure that should be coming soon, and the promises we've heard from Electrify America and their expansion plans, as well as Tesla opening up the supercharger network to other EV brands. I think definitely in the next year, 2 years, this is going to be a great option for people. All right, back in the Tesla and heading home. When I pulled out from the side of the road, there was no clunk, even though we were on a hill, which I'm assuming is just the brakes releasing or something, but it did catch my attention. This is the vehicle I'm used to, so naturally I'm going to be more used to the sounds and the feathering of the accelerator, that kind of thing. The regen is definitely heavier in the Model Y. And going down to the stop with mostly regen, it's pretty smooth. This has a lot of good curves, so I'm going to just throw it into these a little bit and see how it feels. Yep, a little more grounded and planted. And being able to use that heavier regen instead of brakes, you just feel like you have a little bit more control. And although that's kind of an apples to apples comparison, if you took the EV factor out of the equation, and in front of me here's a Cadillac XT5, I'm sure that would have far more body roll and not be able to handle the corners as well as the Mach E. And most of these crossovers and SUVs that are around me wouldn't be able to do nearly what the Mach E can do, or the Model Y, just because of, you know, where the weight is distributed and the instant torque of the motors. A couple things I've noticed that were a little bit of a surprise were you have to be pretty firm with some of the things. To open the charge port, you have to push it far harder than I expected to. And so I was a little cautious, afraid of breaking it, so it took me a while to open it. Also, closing the trunk took a lot more force than I was expecting. You don't slam it like you would on an ICE car, but you also don't like gently press like you do on our Tesla Model Y. So overall, my first impressions are that it's a very good quality car and a great transition vehicle from coming from ICE and going electric. Now, as you're driving, if you put the foot down, seeing the hood in front of you has kind of got that Mustang shape to it. If you weren't sitting so high, you could almost picture yourself in a classic muscle car. But it does have very different characteristics, and it's got things to enjoy about it that are all its own. So I definitely think it's worth checking out, test driving if you're in the market for a new vehicle of any kind, especially if you're looking at an EV. Will I be trading the Model Y in for a Mustang Mach E? No, I won't, but I do really like the vehicle, and not everyone's going to want to go to an EV in the same way. And to have a good quality option like this is really exciting, and it's going to make a lot of people very happy. Like anything, even when you get in a rental car, you are going to have a learning curve, and that UI is going to take some getting used to. I still haven't found half of the things I was looking for in it, but I can see how over time, if you sat down and really went through it, you could find what you need. And that's something that can be simplified and enhanced over time via software updates. The charging network is a little rough. Now here we've got a good example of level 2 charging that's all around the town I'm in, but it's not quick. My home charging is not quick, but I could do that at home overnight. So if you have a garage and you can charge it overnight, this is a really good option. In Minnesota at this point, there isn't a ton of really fast charging. We were at that Electrify America station, had a couple issues that may have been some user error, but still took a little while to get going. But once we did, we had some pretty good charge speeds. So I was happy with that. But those are the fastest chargers for CCS in the state at this point. And until that network grows in Minnesota, depending on what you need to do, you might need to hold off a little bit. On the other hand, this vehicle came from Roseau, Minnesota, which is way up near the Canadian border. And the fact that they're selling these up there and excited about them up there is a good sign that if you have the vehicle, can charge at home, it's going to work for you. But with 300 miles of rated range and the right charging infrastructure, it could be a great road trip or two. And Kyle Connor has proved that you can really cruise in this thing. It'll also be interesting to see how this works if and when the supercharger network opens up, and if there's an adapter where you could charge this at superchargers, that would open up North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana to a whole different level of travel with this vehicle. And so that's just one more infrastructure thing we have to look forward to. But like I said, I did really enjoy it, and I look forward to driving it back. With the Mach E returned and my initial thoughts, now it's time to go to that second part, my interview with Paul. And it was a phone interview, so I've added some B-roll, some pertinent maps, websites, etc., just to keep the visuals moving. The essence of the interview is unchanged, although I did edit out the ums, ahs, pauses, and pleasantries, just to make it easier and a little faster for you to listen back.
My name is Paul Blomquist. I own the C&M Ford of Hallock, Minnesota, and Roseau County Ford of Roseau, Minnesota. I've been a dealer since 1988. Took over for my father after he had passed away suddenly in 88. He was a dealer from 1966. So we're celebrating our 55th anniversary, in fact, today, October 1st.
Oh, congratulations.
I didn't even realize that until I was just saying it. So yeah, this is an important date for us. Born and raised in Hallock, went to school in Minneapolis, Augsburg College, graduated from there in 88, and obviously moved back with a quick decision after my father passed away.
Yeah, that's a big responsibility to take over suddenly. I'm sure a pretty emotional time. So.
Yes, yeah. But I had a wonderful group of employees then. We had approximately 10 employees at that time, and some are still around, so yeah.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I obviously first heard of you and heard your presentation through the Minnesota EV Owners Group. You gave a really good talk about your position in Clean Cars Minnesota and your statement you gave there, which thank you very much for that. That was fantastic. Glad to see that finally went through. I just thought you had such a fantastic perspective being a rural dealership in far northern Minnesota. And right there, that to me kind of cuts out some of the initial questions people have about EVs of can they work in the winter and is this going to work out in rural Minnesota? And so you just have such a fantastic perspective there.
Yeah. And my perspective, honestly, is evolving. When you listen to me a few months back, I quite didn't know I don't want to say just level of interest, but the impact that EVs were going to have at that time, because the Lightning wasn't out then, and many things have happened since then that we'll talk about. Thank
you for loaning the vehicle, the Mustang Mach E, to Yucca. I really did. It was really an enjoyable experience. I hope you don't mind. I kind of put it through its paces a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you did. What were your first kind of observations?
Well, I drive a Model Y, and so size-wise, it's pretty similar. I love the styling of the Mach E. I think it looks really good, and it unfortunately doesn't come across so well in pictures. I was a little hesitant when I had only seen pictures of it, and then in early 2020 at the auto show, I saw one in person for the first time and completely changed my mind. I was like, oh, no,
that's a compliment to the design, to go from. Normally photos are doctored, aren't they?
Yeah. And so I thought it just, had much more aggressive look and, much more sporty, good, Mustang-ish looks. So that really impressed me. And then I just got in, navigated to the charging station. Yeah, navigation was pretty simple, and, I was just really enjoying myself. I think anybody coming from a gas car especially is just going to be wowed at how well it drives and what an enjoyable place to be it is.
Yeah, there was a couple comments you made. One is the Mustang. That has, and being a Ford dealer for 50-some years, you never want to go away from your tried and true vehicles, and the Mustang has been one. So I've gotten a lot of resistance from my Mustang lovers. It's understandable resistance because you wouldn't think a Mustang would be a four-door, let alone a SUV. But from a performance standpoint, you really kind of get that sense and feel when you look at the outside like you're describing. You do see the DNA, the Mustang DNA.
Yeah, yeah.
So, no, that's very, very exciting. Yeah. But also, I'll share with you, too, my first experience with the Mach E, I was anxious getting into it, not knowing really what to experience. But, outside of the battery versus the gas engine or otherwise, outside of the battery, it's like any other car. So it's not like taking you out of into this weird situation, which I'm glad you love the technology and the features and the benefits and whatnot. But a lot of that stuff is quite frankly standard in a lot of our vehicles now. So the transition for a lot of ICE owners outside of the battery is going to be very similar. It's not so scary. At least that was one of my observations anyway.
Yeah, that was a big impression. That I was guessing, I haven't driven a lot of current Ford vehicles, but
sure.
Yeah, my thought was, if you're coming out of Escape or something like this, you're going to feel right at home in this vehicle without much difference.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on.
Because I'm not as familiar with the Ford lineup, just for people who haven't seen the Mach E in person, what would you say a comparable Ford vehicle size-wise is to the Mach E?
So just to kind of, for those that aren't aware of the Ford lineup, our smallest SUV is the EcoSport. Next up is the Escape, and the Edge, Explorer, Expedition.
Mm-hmm.
The Mach E fits between the Edge and the Explorer when it comes to interior size and exterior appearance. It actually is, from a size standpoint, closer between the Edge and the Escape. So it's kind of right in that Edge area. Bigger on the inside, a little smaller on the outside, if that makes sense.
Okay. As I've been driving around, I've been looking at other Fords and saying, is it kind of like that one, or is it kind of like that one? So, I think that's good context for people.
Yeah.
You had the event up in Roseau, and I just read an article this morning about that event. Sounds like it had great attendance and a lot of great interest. How did you feel like it went?
Have you been listening to public radio this morning?
I didn't, but I did read the article.
Yeah, so Dan, I was listening to Kathy Wurzer this morning, and it was about 7 o'clock. I'm coming back from an EV event in Duluth. I left Bemidji this morning, and I hear the Dan Gunderson piece on it, and it was just wonderful. It was a fun event. Roughly 150 people showed up. A lot of Teslas and Chevys, and obviously the Mach E, so people had an opportunity to test drive. They had an opportunity to speak with Yuka and a lot of other experts in the utility world that had booths set up, as well as some of my sales staff that were there answering questions and offering drives and rides.
Yeah, it sounds like the event went really well. I talked to a couple people who were there who said, it was great. With 150 people showing up, that's pretty good. And did you find a lot of enthusiasm, skepticism? How are people feeling in that area about EVs in general or the Mach E, or is everybody just looking forward to the Lightning?
Great question. I had a lot of questions on the Lightning. We had from skeptics all the way up to enthusiasts. But one thing I did not that I wasn't surprised because of Minnesota Nice, and we're wonderful people up here in northern Minnesota, there weren't the angry kind of anti-EV people there. There's and one example, and we all like to have a little fun up in the northern part of Minnesota, and my salesman was sitting down with some of his customers at our local Legion. And a year ago, with the same crowd, these guys would have been bashing EVs. Mm-hmm. Today, one, they're admitting it's coming, and it's coming fast. Two, they're interested. So it's turning, and it's turning very quickly. So it was a wonderful crowd. A lot of excitement. There were skeptics there, people that were wondering about it. If you listen to that public radio article, one gentleman talked about it before, and he was a skeptic. And afterwards, after test driving, he said, wow. Yeah,
that is so important and so great why you're kind of letting your Mach E kind of run the gamut of the state is we always say butts and seats is what changes people's minds, and
it really does. It really does. But to go back to your last kind of comment on the Lightning, there's absolutely no question that is going to be the game changer up in our neck of the woods when it comes to adoption, interest, buying, so forth and so on. Because we're truck country, we're hunters, we're fishermen, we're farmers. And I have 59 reservations that speak to it. Certainly not all of them from this neck of the woods, but a lot of them are. So there's interest.
Yeah, and once those first 59 get delivered, there's going to be a lot more orders following them.
That is correct. I still encourage everyone to reserve one. Pick Roseau County Ford or C&M Ford, Hallock or Roseau.
Yeah, definitely. You want to get your numbers up. Kind of seeing this revolution, or Ford's kind of ramp up. They just made this major announcement of $11.4 billion in expansion for some new facilities, batteries, more
jobs in America.
Jobs in America, fantastic. It seems like when Ford started announcing they were going to do this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of felt like, okay, we're going to put the Mach E out there and see how it does. And I feel like they were pretty surprised by the positive response, and then the Lightning response, and kind of like, oh, we had these plans, but we're going to need to accelerate because there's a lot of demand we didn't necessarily expect. Did you, as someone inside Ford, did you see that, or is that just my outside perspective?
Your observation is accurate, very accurate, spot on. With the Mach E, Ford, not necessarily publicly or not even sharing with dealers, had a roadmap, an EV roadmap. And their expectations were good for the EV, but they didn't, for the Mach E, but they didn't realize how good until about a year ago, a little less than that. At that point, they were announcing the electric F-150, and a month or so after making a private announcement, they called it the Lightning and had a wonderful opening excitement around it. It was at that point when the reservations started to take off that they said, holy smokes, this thing's going to be a hot product. At that time, they were telling us that they were partnering with SK Technologies, I think, out of South Korea to build batteries. And they told us point blank, we're not the battery specialists. We're going to leave it up to them, and we're going to see how technology evolves. Well, in your question to me, just that Ford is building 3 battery plants and an F-150 plant in Tennessee and Kentucky. That was not on their roadmap 12 months ago. It probably wasn't on their roadmap 6 months ago. It's moving so fast, so exciting. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of reservationists that aren't going to get their Lightning right away, but this commitment that they're making to build up to 1 million battery vehicles, and I anticipate that's going to be over a 3 to 5 year window, is a commitment by Ford, by our leadership, and certainly by our dealership body to service these vehicles and to sell them.
Yeah, it was so encouraging to, like I said, from an outsider perspective, to kind of get that sense of, like, oh, I think they're understanding they can be, like, take a huge part of the EV market share if they play their cards right. And it's great to see, aggressive movement toward that. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. No question. It's funny you say outsiders, and I know how, and just getting to meet you and Yuka and Padan and others that are EV enthusiasts, I'm sure you guys have felt like outsiders for a long time. Now you're right in the middle of it all, and it is exciting. I'm excited to be a part of that family and have others join in.
Yeah, and sometimes in the media it gets played up as one team's going to win or the other team's going to win, and there is some of that. People have their tribalisms, but for a lot of us, it's like, no, we need to, like, everyone needs to switch over. So whoever can do it and do it the best, and the more the merrier. And some people are going to like one brand and some people are going to like another brand, but that's why there needs to be great options.
That's right.
From different manufacturers.
Yep, that's right.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the Minnesota EV owners presentation you did, you were talking about how you are kind of the regional representative of many dealers. And so how are you seeing like other dealers getting ready for this change? Is there resistance, or as kind of Ford's position evolved, has their position evolved? Are you feeling pretty good about that, or how's it going?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a very current, relatable question because there has, as customers have been slow to adopt electric vehicles, there's been the same pathway with dealers. And it's difficult to change, as we all know.
Yep.
As humans or automotive industry or whatever, it's very difficult to change. And so there's this kind of, I'll say, there are certainly anti-EV dealers, but there isn't the angry anti-EV that I'm hearing anymore. There's people that have signed up for EV certification that aren't engaged much, but they signed up just because they felt they had to. And there's a fairly large group of what we call select dealers that aren't signed up. So that's part of my mission and why I'm on the road. And because when you see our financial impact, 59 reservations, if they convert to 70% orders, that's 35 vehicles. They're all, out of the 35 vehicles, 70% of those are all new to my dealership. Never bought a Ford in their life.
Oh, wow.
So when you put things into numbers, and after that test drive, like I said on that one customer, before he's a skeptic, and after he said, wow, that's when we start getting supply, and we get our number one selling vehicle, 44 straight years, the F-150, that's when the mindset's going to change with, I know, the Ford dealer body, and I'm sure it's going to happen with all other manufacturer dealers. So, it's a win-win. And in the past, it kind of felt like a win-lose,
Yeah.
But now it's a different world. And certainly it helps when Ford made that announcement of the $11 billion investment. I mean, that's a huge amount of money.
Yep.
In something that now Ford dealers see the commitment, and hopefully they'll get on board. And I believe they will.
Yeah, and I do understand,
Yes.
Like you've said, how long your dealership's been running, and like you talked about in your other presentation, that it is an investment,
It is.
and it's scary to make an investment if you don't know if you don't have certainty that's the direction things are going. And that
Good comment.
That 11 billion is a pretty good indication that hey, we're really taking this seriously. So yeah, hopefully that does help.
It will.
You talked a little bit about availability, and obviously the Lightning won't be rolling off the line until next year. But how has availability been for the Mach E?
It's been a challenge.
Has it?
There's no question that supply is, if not the most important issue, top three. One, Ford's addressing it with the battery plants, 1 million vehicles, but it's not going to be overnight.
Right.
Two, and this is why I supported clean cars. Clean car states are going to get supply earlier than non-clean car states.
Yep.
Because the manufacturer has to make sure those states hit certain mandates.
Mm-hmm.
A huge chunk of the Mach E's are going to Europe.
Yeah, I noticed that
they're going to Europe because of the mandates.
Mm-hmm.
So Ford has got, and all manufacturers have this delicate balance of making sure that they build enough, but they're almost forced to send them to those certain states or countries because of the mandates. And that's why I'm excited that Minnesota signed on for it. Because, and again, a year ago when I started supporting clean cars, I didn't realize this level of commitment that we see today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so thankful that we signed on, and because it's just giving us a leg ahead of other states in getting the product, which is going to be way more popular 2 years from now when the cooling off period happens in the state of Minnesota. So, exciting time.
Yeah, definitely.
You might know better. Yuko is sharing some consumer demand numbers, and this is one of the reasons why there was resistance to clean cars and whatnot, because it should be more consumer-driven rather than government-driven. Well, now the numbers are showing that consumers are wanting to buy it. Now the numbers show that the manufacturers are putting money behind this product and making commitments like they have. So all the stars are lining up.
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting next couple of years, and those big statements by the companies and what Ford is doing is really exciting. And like you said, does kind of take that emotion out of the game. It's like, oh no, this is happening whether I personally like it or not. So I had a couple just kind of fun questions for you of what is your favorite feature and what you think is the best color for the Mach E?
I like the carbonized gray, which is not available anymore. It was available in the first edition. That's the color that you drove.
Okay.
It is my favorite color in that vehicle. And I love the lane keeping system. Quite honestly, I've put on 4,000 or 5,000 of the 7,000 miles that are on it right now.
Yep.
I really haven't used it, but when Yuka and I went from Roseau to Bemidji to Duluth, he said, and I drove the whole way, he said, use the lane keeping, just let it drive by itself. And man, oh man, it was cool. It actually felt a little more relaxing when I got out of a 300-mile drive because you weren't fighting the steering wheel or whatever the case might be. So favorite features.
Yeah, it's nice to have that assistance. And obviously still paying attention, but, it just takes the edge off a little bit.
And that's a great description. It takes the edge off. And here in a few months, I'll be doing an over-the-air update, downloading a software that'll allow me to drive autonomously, hands-free. So I'm excited about that feature as well.
Is there kind of a roadmap for the rate of improvement and feature rollout, or is it?
Yeah.
I guess you got to, like with every company, you got to take it slow and make sure it works and it's safe, and then bring out the next feature and roll it out. I had a chance just on a couple mile stretch on the interstate to try it out, and it worked fairly well. I was,
It does. It does wander a little bit, but it doesn't wander as much as I thought it would. So
yeah, it's not like you said. If you're paying attention, it does have a little float to it. But, I could definitely see it would be really nice on road trips.
It's very nice, yeah.
Yeah. Just some basics. What are the kind of starting prices of the Mach E, if you know it off the top of your head?
Yeah. So a rear-wheel drive standard batteries in the neighborhood of around $42,000. A loaded up all-wheel drive GT performance extended range battery is going to be north of 60.
So that's a pretty good range. You should be able to dial in just what you want in that range.
Yep. And as you know, with the federal tax incentives, or maybe people don't know, that cuts off at 200,000 units. I don't know the exact number, but I've heard people say Ford's at 130 right now. So
okay.
Certainly, here's another plug for C&M and Roseau County Ford. Order your Mach E's now, because you might have an additional up to $7,500 federal tax incentive.
Yeah, and that may extend. We'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks with tax incentives and things. But definitely locking those in if you can to get those deals, because that does help. Nobody's going to turn that kind of money away.
Definitely.
We know the Lightning's coming, and we know they're doing this expansion. I've heard, I'm sure you can't say specifically unless there's something I don't know that's been announced. Is there talk of other models electrifying? I was really excited by the design of the new Bronco, but then disappointed there wasn't an electric version. And I know there's talk of, like, the Maverick is the new small pickup, but I don't think that's electric yet. Is there talk of branching out more?
Certainly. So by 2030, 50% of all new Fords built will be electric.
Okay.
So, and you've been around to know enough about quality, and Ford's quality is at top of line. They want to make sure that they don't want to put an electric battery in every single model until things get tried, true, and tested. They want to do it in their number one performance vehicle in the Mustang. They did it. They want to do it in the number one selling vehicle in the world in the F-150. They're doing it. And they want to do it in the number one selling commercial van, the Ford Transit, and they're doing it. So all those models you mentioned, the Maverick, the Bronco, you can better believe that the direction we're going, there's going to be an electric option. And quite frankly, there might not be an ICE option in, I'll call it the next generation. 15 years or whatever the case may be. Ford hasn't made that commitment at this time. Yeah.
Sure. As Ford's making this commitment, as your dealership in rural northern Minnesota, as these products are coming out, what are some things that you really want people to know that maybe don't get asked, or that do get asked, but it's good to reiterate?
Oh boy, for the skeptics, I recognize change is hard, and all I ask is, if and when you have the opportunity, take a Mach E for a test drive. Sit down and talk with one of my salespeople or people that have had electric vehicles. It's not intimidating, as one would think. Range anxiety is understandable, but with 85% of all vehicles charging happening at home, with a 300-mile range on most of our Fords, and only getting better, 95% of one's driving, if not higher, will fall within that range easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
So to the skeptics, just take the opportunity to go for a test drive. For those that have been early adopters in year one, I met George, I can't remember his last name, from north of Duluth last night. We were on a speaking panel. He's owned one since, 11 years, 12 years.
Oh, wow.
These early adopters, I would say, give us a chance too, because I recognize, again, here's a change question that I ask, is it's not maybe easy to support Ford, because we haven't been in your camp, but we are working hard to build vehicles of high quality that have great Ford dealers to support and service those vehicles without traveling long distances to get vehicle service. So give Ford a chance. Take them for a test drive and have some fun along the way.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point. Is there's a sense of skepticism, but switching to an EV is fun. And when you do those test drives, you realize this isn't a chore. This is fun. And the Mach E is a great example of the fun you can have in an electric vehicle. I always think with the rural area. I'm from Le Sueur, Minnesota, down near Mankato.
Corn country.
Yep, Green Giant. I always think of put a pin in your house and then draw a 300-mile circle around your house. And if there's other chargers or other opportunities for charging within that circle, then you can draw a circle around that place. And when you start thinking of it as my home is the center of this big circle, and when you really look at that on a map, it's amazing how far you can go.
It's a great graphic. Yep.
You're going to lose some in the winter in northern Minnesota and southern Minnesota. You're going to lose some, but do a 150-mile circle around your house, and you're still going to find that gets you almost everywhere you would normally need to go. Is there anything else you want to say, or
I don't. I want to say thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's partnerships like this that get me up in the morning, get me excited about opportunities to explore new paths, and this is one that I've had a lot of fun with. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and not only promoting me, my businesses, Ford Motor Company, but also this EV world. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, it really is. The next couple of years are going to be crazy, the shift that's going to happen. Well, I just really want to thank you. Thank you for your support on Clean Cars Minnesota. Thank you for being kind of a good advocate with the other dealers and the people in your area, and really all across Minnesota. Sharing the Mach E is a great way to get people excited.
You're so welcome.
Well, that concludes my deep dive into the Ford Mach E and what I think is the first stepping stone into the future of Ford. So thank you for joining me for all of that. And thank you to Paul and Yuka for letting me have this opportunity once again. Now, since I initially recorded this, the Mach E GT Performance has come out, and that does a 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds and costs $65,000. And it's got different tires, different suspension, and a little more of those performance. It's got a extended unbridled mode that helps it, kind of have a longer lasting track mode, basically. So that probably takes care of some of the float I was feeling in the Mach E as we were going around corners. But again, that's an added cost, and I don't know, depending on your budget and interests, it may not be worth it to you. But before I go, I just want to reiterate some of those resources that if you're considering the Mach E, you should check out. Inside EVs, Out of Spec Motoring, EV Dave, and the Mach E vlog. All on YouTube, all have great Mach E resources, as well as State of Charge with Tom Malogny to get a really good look at the Mach E, but also the different charging options for it. And with that, we're finally to the end. Thanks for hanging out. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff if you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. I've really enjoyed my time with it. Thanks for coming along. Let me know if you have any questions down below. Fun day of driving with this Mustang Mach E.